Me too.
So today we're going to touch on points that I heard in a podcast. And this was from Clearly Clinical. They provide continuing education to mental health providers. But actually all their podcasts are available to all. And this one is actually, you can get, if you're a mental health person, you could get one free CE for listening. I'm not putting a plug in necessarily, but I'm just actually trying to give credit where credit is due.
Right. And the interview is something that if you're not a mental health practitioner is quite interesting. That's why we're taking it up. We heard a lot of Dharma in it. And the person that was interviewed, her name is Tanya Israel, and she's a professor of counseling psychology at the University of California in Santa Barbara. And what caught me about her work, she's written books and been working with very interesting communities, has an interesting identity herself. But she, in the 90s, brought together a pro choice and pro life group of people to have a dialogue so that they could learn from each other about their views and what they thought about the issues of being pro life and pro choice.
And the reason she did it is because she was really angry and she really wanted to do something because this internal anger. She was really angry at the pro-life side. And her summary of this was that it wasn't that she changed her views on reproductive rights because she didn't, but she really changed her views of the people who were pro-life. And that's what really changed and set her off on doing this work. That was 20 plus years ago.
And she really changed her feeling. She wasn't as angry anymore. And she didn't have to live in that poison, which we know feels often very bad. Some people, anger feels uplifting, gives you energy at points, but in general, it's not a good home.
Right. And Buddhism doesn't give it a good rap either.
Right.
It is considered one of the poisons. Um, so she puts it, and and another little part about her is she does self-define as a Buddhist. So when we found Dharma in it, I think that's because she knows Dharma and she was not teaching Dharma, but it was embedded in her views.
Right. So she goes into looking at polarization and really starting to define it as something that we're hardwired with. In a tribal society, which we grew up in, which humans evolved from, which we still have, the mentality of our group is safe and caring. We must protect it against the others, the other groups, which threaten our resources, our ideas, and who we are.
And you put it in more contemporary terms, but back
Yeah.
in the day from which we evolved, it was really, there still is some real danger, but I don't think there's a saber-toothed tiger that's going to walk down my street today. I really, really doubt that. And even if there was a mad, probably even all the dogs are on leashes. So, um, we don't have the same kind of objective threats. We have threats, but our brain we don't have to protect ourselves and each other the same ways, but the brain still is, it's like that.
Hardwired for
Right.
that.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And she puts this in an interesting framework for us. And Nellie brought this to me, and then I studied it, and we've been going back and forth on it for a little while. But she looks at two types of polarization: affective polarization and ideological polarization. And she starts to talk about this ideological polarization as our difference of views, the points of view that we live in that trigger us, that we would fight for. And then the kind of polarization is the mistrust and hostility we feel towards people with other views. with not our views, with the opposite views.
And, views, this is a topic that's also very important in Buddhism and very important in what we're doing in reflective meditation. In many ways, when we're talking about our meditation, our views are embedded in even how we choose to find words for our meditation. So views, we're often looking towards views. And so and our views, it's true, our views are quite different than perhaps the other tribes' views, if we're going to look at it through that lens. And of course, our views are not all the same in our tribe, but whatever tribe you may put yourself in. But there are really different views going on. And that, she says, is not really the problem. And that's what she was sort of saying also where she began the work. She didn't change her views about reproductive rights, but it's really the affective, the feeling. That's what affective means, the feeling, the polarization that's within our feelings that's really corrosive.
Right. And when I look at that for myself, living in a world where I'm not so much in a bubble of my own views, I'm living with quite a few people with different views. There are some people I still can't speak with because of my own feelings that come up when I talk about different views. And we're really bringing it back to looking at our own feelings around these views, like our own practice with them, knowing when I can speak with somebody about other views where it won't take me into harmful behavior. I'm just kind of generalizing that, but harmful to myself even. That my speech and the way I feel about somebody else with different views, I have to consider what I can offer, where I am in the whole picture.
And then, I sort of did paint it in black and white, but of course it's all shades of gray around views too. It's not like everybody in quote my tribe holds the same views as I do. No, not at all. We each have our own different shades of gray and within these views. And she's saying that if we create some of the misunderstanding or misperception we have about how far apart our views are, that actually or decreases some of that animosity. Or, the way I would put it in my own words is when we stop seeing it as a solid, this is the view of my tribe, or, all Democrats believe this and all Republicans. No, not. At the end, they had to, well, I don't know what they did because the different voting is different in different states, but they made a mark, and they marked which side they were going to vote for. You have to choose, but often our views are much more nuanced than that.
Right, right, and that nuance. I think this goes back to our practice and just basic conditionality. We can't see one person as all one thing, one view as all one thing. Like you said, Nellie, a solid stack of this. When you pull it apart, start to look at it from different angles, we'll see different conditions, and we'll see actually that we might be very close on other views, even if we're far apart on certain views that maybe have deep meaning to us. But if we can start to bring it together a bit more, we look at a larger picture, a broader spectrum.
Right. And of course, we are about looking internally and being with what is. And I certainly can say I've experienced, animosity and hatred and anger sometimes at what I construct as who they are. And that feels bad. It feels bad.
Right. So the poisons that are in the atmosphere are in us too. They really, we can't like just completely bypass them. We're living in some poisons externally, they affect us internally, and the poisons are typically talked about as greed, hatred, and delusion. And how do we live with those. And actually, in Buddhist teachings, we say go against the stream of those. That the stream of tribalism, the stream that of our DNA to fight, to protect only people that we love, that Buddhist teachings are going against that stream and trying to expose and bring out other aspects like compassion and understanding and interconnectedness.
And maybe going back to our practice, the capacity to sit with all of this and not really go berserk.
That's a good ending, Nelly, to sit with this and not go berserk. So I will end the Dharma talk here.